So, you're living in Canada as a permanent resident. You've made it this far, and now you're looking at the final incredible step, becoming a full-fledged Canadian citizen. It's the ultimate upgrade, right? It's what turns you into a full member of the Canadian family. Today, we're going to break down exactly how you get there, so let's jump right in.
And if you are thinking about applying, you are definitely going to want to pay close attention. Because in 2026, the rules for becoming a citizen saw their biggest shakeup in a generation. Seriously, the old rule book is basically out the window, and understanding what's new is absolutely crucial.
So, what's the big change? It's all about a new law called Bill C-3. You see, for years, there was this rule called the first-generation limit, which, believe it or not, stops some Canadians who were born abroad from passing their own citizenship onto their kids. Bill C-3 gets rid of that rule completely. Now, citizenship can be passed down, but there's a catch. The Canadian parent has to prove a substantial connection to Canada. And how do you do that? By having lived here for at least 1,095 days. This is a total game changer for thousands of families who were kind of stuck in limbo before.
Okay, but what about all of you who are already permanent residents here in Canada? I know what you might be thinking. It's a super common question. Look, I've got my PR card, I can live here, I can work here. Why should I even bother with citizenship? And you know what? That's a totally fair question. The answer really boils down to 3 huge upgrades to your life.
Let's just break it down. First up, security. Your permanent resident status, well, it's not set in stone. It can be lost. But citizenship, that gives you an absolute, unquestionable right to be in Canada. Second, global mobility. You get to trade in your PR card for one of the most powerful passports on the planet, giving you visa-free access to over 185 countries. And third, and this is a big one, civic rights. You finally get that fundamental right to vote and even run for office. You get a real voice in shaping this country's future.
All right, so you're convinced, but how do you actually know if you're eligible to apply? Well, the government has laid out 5 key requirements. I like to think of them as the 5 pillars of eligibility. Let's go through them and see if you can check off all the boxes. The first, and honestly, the most important pillar is this number right here, 1,095. You absolutely must have been physically in Canada for 1,095 days. That's 3 full years within the 5-year period right before you apply. This is the big one. And as you'll see in a minute, it's where most people get tripped up. The other 4 pillars are just as important, but they're a bit more straightforward. You need to have valid permanent resident status, obviously. You also have to have filed your income taxes for at least 3 of the last 5 years. And finally, you'll need to pass a knowledge test about Canada and show you have basic language skills in either English or French. But it's worth noting, those last 2, the language and knowledge tests, they only apply if you're between 18 and 54 years old. Okay, so you've checked all 5 boxes. You're eligible. So what happens next? The application process itself isn't super complicated, but it is very precise. The best way to think about it is like a clear path with 4 major milestones on your way to taking that final oath.
So here's the path. Step 1 is calculating your physical presence, and you have to use the government's official online calculator for this. Step 2, you gather all your documents and you submit your application through their online portal. Then you wait. About 6 to 8 months later, you'll get to step 3, taking the citizenship test. And once you pass that and your background checks are all clear, you'll get that golden ticket, the invitation for the final step, attending the citizenship ceremony and taking the oath.
Of course, there are costs and timelines to think about. As of early 2026, the fee for an adult application is just under $650, while an application for a minor is just $100. And you've got to be prepared to wait a bit. The average processing time for a standard application is currently sitting at about 13 months, from the day you submit to when you get that final decision.
Let's just talk about that test for a second, because I know it can make a lot of people nervous. But really, it's very straightforward. It's a 20-question multiple-choice exam, and all the questions are based on the official Discover Canada study guide. You need to get 15 out of 20 right to pass. And here is the most important part. If you don't pass on your first try, don't panic. You automatically get a second chance.
Now for our final and maybe our most important section. We've talked about the why and the how. Now let's talk about what not to do. Getting your citizenship is like reaching the finish line of a marathon. And trust me, tripping and falling just a few feet before you cross that line is a painful mistake that can set you back years. Remember that magic number we talked about, 1,095? Well, what happens if, after all your hard work, all your calculating, your final number comes out to this, 1,094?
That's what happens. It's an automatic, no questions asked refusal. There is zero room for error here.
If you are short by even a single day on your physical presence calculation, the application fails. End of story.
And here's why that one single day matters so much. This is not an honor system. The Immigration Department, IRCC, they cross-reference everything you submit with official entry and exit logs from both the Canadian and the U.S. border agencies. So if your calculation doesn't perfectly match their records, maybe because you forgot a quick weekend trip across the border, your application will be refused.
So what is the single most important thing you can take away from all of this? It's simple. Apply with a buffer. Do not submit your application on the exact day you hit 1,095. Just wait. Give yourself a cushion of at least 10 extra days, maybe even a few more. That way, if there is some tiny little discrepancy in your travel history, you're still safely over that threshold.
So there you have it. The requirements are clear, the steps are all laid out, and now you know the biggest trap to avoid. Becoming a Canadian citizen is such a huge milestone. It's that final confirmation that you belong here. So the only real question left to ask is 2026 going to be your year to take the oath?